What Jesus says here perfectly sums up, I believe, a common tension that we see or that we make in the text and conversation that we have discussing a doctrinal point between God's sovereignty and man's responsibility. You ever heard that conversation? How do we understand God's totally in control of all things, but also I'm responsible for my sin, I'm responsible for how I respond to God. And so while this tension exists and how we understand and articulate it often, Jesus, without any pause or explanation, he just states it plainly. And here's the thing, I don't know that it perfectly resolves any of the tension that we feel when we read this. And so here's what I mean by that. I believe that what we see from Jesus here is that God's foreknowledge of something, and some of you hate that word, foreknowledge, predestination, all those things, and that's not what we're getting into this morning. But God's foreknowledge of something doesn't hinge upon him merely knowing what we'll decide and him adjusting accordingly. That's actually a very common explanation for God's foreknowledge, that he knows what we will decide, what we'll do, and he kind of adjusts what he'll do based on how we respond. But no, rather the truth of Scripture is that Jesus is infinite, and he's in control of all things. He's in control of all things. And not only that, he is purposeful in what he determines. He is purposeful in what he does. But also that we see in this verse, so, if you just read this verse, you can see that the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. Hey, there's nothing going to stop Jesus from going to the cross. And then in the very next breath, he says, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. And so, yes, Jesus is in control. He is sovereign over all things. But he also says that our responsibility for sin is not merely the helpless, passive determination of a vengeful God, but rather our active, willing betrayal and disobedience of him.